Welcome everyone to episode 48 of What's That Sound podcast. My name's Stu Watts, and today I talked with George Carpenter, who is a musician, producer and engineer based out of the Gold Coast. In this episode, we talked about the importance of surrounding yourself with people that have more experience than you, the art of guiding the artist instead of telling them what to do, as well as helping the music community around you by bringing them into your projects. For all that and heaps more, stay tuned. If you can do us a favor and make sure you share the podcast around, whether that's in a DM, in a conversation, or on a post on your socials, whatever you can do to spread the word about the podcast, that really helps us out. Make sure that you've hit follow or subscribe on the platform that you're checking this out on. That way you can stay up to date with anything new from What's That Sound. And if you have any questions or suggestions about the podcast, make sure you send us an email, podcast.whatsthatsound@gmail.com. All of the links to anything about George or myself are in the show notes. You can check them out at any time. Apart from that, let's get into the episode. This is a great conversation between myself and George Carpenter. You're listening to What's That Sound with your host, Stu Watts. Welcome, everyone. I am here with George Carpenter today. Welcome, George, to the podcast.
Thanks, Stu. Hey, man.
It's good to see you. And, we only met a couple of months ago at the MPEG Forum, the award ceremony. So it was awesome to meet you there, and I'm glad I could get you on the podcast.
Totally, man. Yeah, that was a fun night, wasn't it?
It was a good night, yeah. It was good. it kind of like, anyway, we don't need to go into it. We know what happened. For those who don't know who you are, give us a bit of an intro to, what you do in the industry.
Okay. Well, I am a producer and an engineer and a mixer, but I came to that through being a musician first. I've been playing music my whole life, basically. That's basically all I do. Played in bands mostly, and coming up, being just sort of like really obsessed with playing the drums, first of all, and then other instruments fanning out from that. And then just becoming, slowly obsessed with recording music from, it started in middle school and it continued into high school and then with my original bands. And then I went to the Conservatorium up here in Queensland and studied, recording and engineering there. And then, playing and then being like fortunate enough to kind of be mentored by some really amazing people sort of around that same time. And then, kind of producing friends' bands in, makeshift studios, and then eventually in, assisting in real studios, and then eventually producing. And 10 years have gone by of like doing nothing other than producing and engineering as my job. And just one foot in front of the other, dude.
I know. It's
that's
like
all,
that.
That's what it is.
Well, let's dive into the early days. When do you remember music kind of being present in your life?
Probably the same as you. Like it's omnipresent. There isn't a time I don't remember there being music in the house. And mum's a singer and piano player, and she was a dancer as well. My older sister played wind instruments, and she's 8 years older than me, but was, feeding me music in the same way. And then Dad had a, small but pretty good vinyl collection, and from the time I was just a real little kid, listening to the Beatles and listening to Joni and listening to the Elton John greatest hits and the Cats soundtrack, and then Amy, my sister, giving me Dookie, and being like, whoa, punk rock, okay, cool. And that kind of really taking over for a lot of my you know, teenage years. But I would say, you know, the music that I should like, yeah, painting a picture of kind of what I'm into with music. I was super fortunate that mum, when I was, you know, 14 and 9 months, was like, you are getting a job and where do you want to work? And I was like, there's a CD store down at our local shopping center here on the Gold Coast at Robina Town Centre. And as a, you know, 14-year-old, I started working in this record store. It was an independent CD store called The Music Shop, if anyone remembers that place. It sort of started in Canberra and then they kind of had a bunch of shops in southeast Queensland. There was one in the Valley. Lots of musos who you know now, like particularly
I can imagine.
One particular one who I worked with. Her name was Amy Smalling. You might know her now as Amy Shark, but we worked. You know, when we were teenagers, I did that. And I worked there for 6 years, and I had this incredible manager there called Dermot Kelly. Shout out Dermot, who just fed me everything that I needed to be fed at the right time, you know?
Sick.
And so like just kind of, he introduced me to all the important ones, you know? And at the same time, I was on my own journey discovering lots of punk bands and, you know, stuff. And he was like, that's cool, but like, here's Warren Zevon and here's, you know, like Bill Callahan, here's Nick Cave, here's like, you know, like early Zeppelin. Oh, he introduced me to the band, you know, like those really important records that they're not the like top shelf ones. They're just below the surface kind of stuff, you know,
Well, I feel like it's one of those things, if you don't have someone in your family or a friend that is like into that stuff, you're just not going to hear about it unless you deep dive yourself. And that's
totally, how do you
do it? How do you do it? You just follow your interests. Back then for us, it would have been LimeWire and stuff like that.
Man.
Like, you know, right, and so like, it wasn't like it is now. You couldn't just go into a playlist and find similar artists. It wasn't that
curated.
easy.
That's right. Yeah, man, totally. I think I recognized the situation when I was there at that time. And we had like this store borrowing system, you know, and I remember my, you know, like high school PC, I used to bring home 5 CDs per shift and burn them onto my PC. And just like by the time like iPods were a thing, kind of this, you know, after school now. I've graduated in 2005. So we're about the same age, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly the same age. Yeah.
Those first tours that I was doing with the bands that I was in at that time, I remember like my iPod was like the best stacked one, you know, I had all of the stuff on there. And
I was the same. I was always the one to burn the CDs, mix CDs for my mates, always.
Yeah. So good. Yeah,
I used to borrow them from like my cousins and the library.
The library. Yeah.
The funniest thing was like the library that I used to go to borrow all the CDs from, it ended up, the lady who was purchasing all of these punk records ended up being my future girlfriend's mum.
No.
And so she was the one that was buying all these punk records and she was into that music.
That's
and
sick.
That was so funny for me to realize.
So
and then I was like, thank you. You've like, you know, you expanded my like musical journey. Like, it was so cool.
How full circle. That's amazing.
So funny.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you guys still listen to punk rock together now?
Oh, this is an old girlfriend,
okay.
but
Got it.
yeah,
So,
back then, yeah, absolutely, it was
Love it, man.
But yeah, man, like moving forward, tell us about the bands that you're in. What that taught you? You know, like obviously being around the scene, and you know how that influenced your movements from then on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Gold Coast scene back then was like actually kind of incredible, man. There have been these like cycles of the Gold Coast having a scene and then being a sort of desolate wasteland of culture that, you know, I think our pals in Melbourne might think that's how it's always been, but there honestly have been some great eras. And I remember that time around the very end of high school and the start of uni, there was just a really amazing kind of buzz particularly in sort of the North Coast hardcore scene and the pop punk scene. You know, Big Day Out was always a really big thing on the Gold Coast. So yeah, I got to play in, like I had, you know, a dozen sort of versions of different high school bands, and we did a ska band, and I was playing in orchestra and wind ensemble, and then big band as well, and then like there's a thing called Gold Coast Youth Orchestra, which I did, and made a bunch of friends there who I ended up a couple of them who I went to uni with after that, and later on produced records for and stuff. But the notable ones were like the earliest iteration of the Delta Rigs was like a band that I played drums in, which was rad, with
nice.
Elliot and Alex. And you've interviewed Alex before, right?
I have.
And then I kind of got introed through Elliot to the guys in Morning Tide, and Morning Tide were a really established band at that point, and they're all about, between like 8 and 10 years older than me too. So I was, again, it wasn't lost on me how fortunate I was to be like, holy shit, I've got this opportunity to join like a full-time touring band right now. And at that time they'd sort of, they'd already been through so much, and they'd already kind of like had a level that they were on. And it was amazing just as a sort of 19-year-old, I think, when I joined the band, to just step into, jump in the van. We're going to go play, 3 weekends of shows, like a lot, in chunks.
Yeah, that's so good.
And that was amazing. And that was sort of, that coincided around the same time I was doing the Bachelor of Popular Music course at the con. And man, what did that teach me? Everything, I think. Like it was just, I saw you posted some footage the other day of like playing the art house back in like 2008 or something. I was like, we were doing that too. Morning Tide were doing that too. And that was a great era for the scene there. And particularly, I got really starry-eyed for Melbourne during that time. I loved Sydney as well. And we always had a great, reaction in Brisbane and Adelaide, and all the places between were always Canberra was always really good to that band as well. But there was something about Melbourne that definitely, fast forward, 10 years later, we were there, and it was my partner Tal and I moved there.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I mean, I didn't start touring until I want to say like 2012, 2013-ish. So it was always Melbourne for me up until that time, from when I was a teenager, So, and just the iconic venues that Melbourne had, and, one or two of them still exist, but, the Art House, like you said, the Rob Roy, which is now Workers Club.
Oh, right.
And so like there was just a bunch of really, and the all ages thing was happening as well. Like
I remember that
doesn't
really
exist anymore.
Yeah, totally. It was,
and I think the thing for Gold Coast for me, it was anytime we went there, it was unless I guess you were part of it, unless you booked a gig with some really like decent Gold Coast bands, you kind of just you just weren't on the radar. It just wasn't a thing. People wouldn't go to a show just like randomly. You had to be playing at a venue where it was like a thing to go to. And that was really, really tough.
You remember that era of Destroy All Lines being really like, sort of a main player in that. Just that scene was just very like, this is all just around. I feel like by about 2013, 14, that was all over, like in my mind at least. It really, it sort of was at its peak around sort of 2008, 9, 10 or something, for
it kind of transitioned into more like a party aspect. And then they definitely had bands on every week.
Yeah.
But I think it was more focused on drinking and partying and having party music going on.
Yeah, it was like
at the start. Yeah, you're right. It was.
I feel like they had that kind of going at that time too, but it wasn't based around DJs as much. It was based around bands and the kind of bands that they had at that time. It was, I don't know, there was just a buzz about. Maybe it was just because I was 21 years old and everything felt super exciting, but. It just how it changed over time,
Yep. Yeah. Well, then, I mean, moving into recording and production, where did that come into play? You were studying your Bachelor of Music, but that necessarily doesn't kind of, there's a crossover because people that are doing, technical stuff as well. And obviously if you're interested in that sort of stuff, then you'll gravitate towards that. But just tell us a bit more about that.
It was actually the bachelor course I did was a thing called a Bachelor of Popular Music, and it was like a third of that course was just audio production and engineering and
wicked.
just hanging out in the studio. And it was amazing. And we had like, a bunch of lecturers who'd done real things. This guy, Jose, who was in, like the Mersey beat scene back in England, and Brendan Anthony, this awesome engineer who worked with In Excess and had done a whole bunch of epic shit.
Nice.
And then like a third of it was kind of like musicology and, the study of genre and
that's fun.
and then the other third was like music business and like, how to work in the modern music industry. But it was super ahead of its time, and it's actually been like it got folded up around COVID and sort of amalgamated into the Brisbane Bachelor of Music Studies course or something. I don't know. It's changed now, but a lot of those lecturers are still there. But they had to move to Brisbane. But the campus was on the Gold Coast, and it was just like big SSL, just huge cupboard of microphones, like all of the stuff you could use. And like I could name so many people who went through that course who and like they're doing great stuff out in the world. It was amazing. It was a really cool time. Lots of people I still work with all the time. But yeah,
and were you getting into sessions or?
Yeah.
I
totally.
mean, of course, during this study, they make you do certain sessions and learn about the equipment and stuff. But outside of that,
it sort of coincided with like the end of that 3-year course. Morningtide did like the record that I wrote and played on, self-titled one, in 2008. We recorded that and put it out in 2009, and we did that at the Grove, and then we did the overdubs back up here at an incredible now defunct studio called Oasis, and that was like, and I'd already worked at Oasis a bunch of times with Rudy, doing rigs sessions and other things, assisting him, and I'd been in a big brother kind of way. He'd sort of mentored me in a bunch of that stuff, and by that point I did feel like I was kind of already doing it, but then I was like going to uni just to like tick that box and be like, okay, cool. I also have like a, real solid technical understanding of it as well as a practical. But then it was sort of in 2010, so I graduated in 2009 from BPM, that I, with some friends from BPM, we just booked a studio, and I was like, I'll produce the band, and it was the friends' band, and it was like, okay, cool, I'm doing that. And at the same time, I was doing sessions for another producer here on the coast who's like an amazing mentor of mine, Mark Duckworth. He's a legend like around here. From there, it was kind of like, oh, maybe I could actually have a career doing this, because I think even at the time I was at BPM, I was like, the career is being a drummer or playing in a band, and I was like, being a producer is too big a mountain to climb. It seemed there were just too many steps of like to get to, and I'd worked at the Grove, I was like, this is like, fuck, to work there is, that's as big as it gets. And I was like, I've done that. And it's like where I'm at here now to like working at the Grove, there's too big a gap, like I don't think I'll ever get there. So I don't know, like I still don't think I'm really there, but but I probably, I'm right at home working on a big SSL.
You're doing it.
Yeah, I absolutely am. But like sort of weirdly in my psyche or something, where you just kind of like, am I doing it? Oh yeah, I am, I guess. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Well, you've talked a lot about the different people that you were in rooms with and that were teaching you things. What do you think, those mentors and that being around that sort of, what did that teach you, and what things do you still remember learning from that time period that you have continued to take into your sessions today?
I think everything, man. I swear, like I don't think there's some technical stuff that I have like my own version of, that I do things with miking drums and, maybe recording the Hammond organ or something, but like almost everything that I know, I reckon I've like seen directly or osmosed, from like working with somebody way better than me, and I was or or chatting about it with them at that time. It's so many things though, dude, but it's the obvious ones. Like it's the interpersonal skills with the band. It's the actually just thinking about the song and the music, and it has nothing to do with the technical, and it has everything to do with the composition and the arrangement and the melody and the lyrics and the intention behind the song. Like the professionalism stuff, I think, which is a really big one that I think a lot of the younger, like I've kind of mentored a few younger producers, in the last, few years. And it's like a thing that everything feels a lot more, it's at your fingertips, and it's like, everything's really possible, but there isn't quite the same level of like friction and leverage that you get out of like, all right, we're booking a big studio today and we're going to be spending $1,000 of the client's money. Like shit needs to be dialed before they're even here, and nothing can clip, or like, of course it can, but like, stuff like that, all of that, like best practice stuff, that is what you learn from going to the big studio. And then when you get to you do all of that, and that's like hundreds of little things maybe. And at the end of the session, if the artist says something like, oh, that was easy and fun, you just like nailed it. That's all you're going for. You just like, there was nothing, you didn't see me do anything remarkable all day, you know, but like the way that whatever it was, you were moving the microphone to offset some of their sibilance or something, was like a thing that you've seen someone do a bunch of times, and you've done it yourself a bunch of times, and practical solutions to just like hundreds of little potential problems. And they all, honestly, man, I give all the credit to like, Rich Stolz and Duck and, Drew from who you met, who works at Avid now. Stephen Schramm, like Anthony Lichenko, R.I.P., amazing producer up here who, had done heaps of great stuff. Like there were lots of people that I got to see do it, and then be like, you put in a pencil in the middle of the U47, and he's like, it stops the plosive, and you're like, whoa, it does stop it really does stop the plosive, like, and it's like a move, those cool old school studio hacks.
Intricacies. And I think that's eventually what you aim for when you've been doing it for, however many years. At the start, it's seemingly so difficult to take in, but when you're around it and you're seeing people do it, you kind of go, oh, that's cool.
That's possible.
Oh, that's cool.
Too.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
oh, that's
yeah.
cool. It's all these little things, but then, like you were saying, you aim for those sessions where seemingly everything goes smoothly. Not to say that we don't have to think about stuff or we don't have to, problem solve or anything like that.
You're thinking the whole time.
You are, and that's why it's so tiring to do a bunch of recording sessions in a row, and like, but you got to make it. Client,
you got to make it look like nothing happened at all. To
the client,
the performance
of it. It's like there's something off about that guitar. It's a little bit too harsh, and you go, "Give me a second," and you just fix it straight away, and they're like, "Oh, that's cool."
Yeah,
I don't know how he did it, but it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, totally.
All
of those things.
So I guess building your skills. Around people, do you think, I guess not do you think, but what else contributed to you building your skills? You had people around you who were watching things being done.
Yeah, man.
What other education came with that as well?
I was going to say, just that thing about like being around people. I think that was, as a professional, I'd sort of worked out of a bunch of the commercial studios here on the coast and in the region, Northern Rivers and, South Brisbane and stuff. But then when we moved to Melbourne, I was super lucky to land a room at the Avery just as one of the other producers was leaving. And just that transition was like remarkably smooth for the fact that of just good timing and whatever. But that community thing, man, again, of like maybe the point, this is like just more over to the same point of just like, I never felt like I was in all my bands, I was always the youngest or I was always the least experienced, and then it was that kind of thing of, even when I got to the Avery, I felt like I was like, oh, wow, I'm kind of like the least experienced producer here, but I'm still working, basically full time. But, being able to like knock on Matt Redlick's door and be like, bud, can you just listen to this? And he'll walk in and just be like, dude, everything about this is wrong. Let's fix some stuff, and be like, oh, heartbreaking, but also Yeah,
Thank
wow,
you.
learning, you know,
You're
and
right.
like, yeah, Josh Barber and Steve Mowat and Fraser Montgomery, obviously, who ran the Avery, runs the Avery still. Just the talent of people that were there and being like, cool, I'm not the smartest person in the room and I'm stoked about that, you know, and being able to like just try and like a sponge, you know, just ask questions and
Yeah,
so good.
I love it.
Yeah, but
it's so important to have that network around you. I mean, it's hard when you see, and I think COVID is something that contributed to this, as well as just the state of social media and things like that, where seemingly you can get everything. You know, seemingly you can get the information. You might have to dial through a whole lot of shit to actually find it, but it is there.
And do you know,
as well
though,
as
you know, once you've dialed through it all, like, are you able to actually separate the good from the bad? You know, and
yes,
that's that thing. You know, those younger producers that I've been mentoring and stuff. I'm like, what you're doing here is amazing, but do you see how like this just is? You know, that's like hot air. That's nothing.
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
And also like you were saying earlier, the ability that the barrier to entry is just so low for gear, and you can get plugins that cost $30 that sound like, and you know, pretty close to an emulation of a $10,000, $20,000 piece of gear.
They make you think you're using a thing that's that good, and then suddenly you've like, this is my issue with this stuff, is like it's not the same. You know, it might only be 10% different, but that 10% is like, why does that epic, that your favorite record, you know, really sound so much better? And it's like, well, probably better than most of them we're done with the real stuff, you know, like the really good ones. If we're being really discerning about like 1% matters a lot at the end of the day for a great record, you know, and it's like you hear real, you know, name the thing or name just the process too, you know, of doing it properly, big room, bunch of people playing live together if it's a band record, or, you know, if it's a synth record, it was like people wrangling samplers and analog machines and there was like fight in it, you know, and there was like, there was a lot of human intention and process and craft that goes into those, you know,
and
those
the
records.
fact that with those pieces of gear, if you've been using them for a long period of time, you know the ins and outs, you know the little thing that's wrong with it, but how to get around it. And, you know, and that gives it something
that gives
special.
It something. That's right, man. Yeah. And it's just that, not that you can't have that with your laptop and Ableton and Omnisphere, but like the way that funnels you to making things just, you know, you've got to be really creative and really, you know, you've sort of got to think like in an analog way, I think, to find the emotional thing in the music that's actually going to be valuable, you know, because otherwise it just funnels you to just plain, you know, drinkable. Like it doesn't do anything, you know, and it's.
But I also think that you have to have done so much more or so many hours with those things still. Like it's just not as simple as bringing up one of those, you know, console emulations and being like, cool, I've got that sound. That's not how it works. You have to have used the source material that's gotten that, you know, you have to have plugged in that guitar amp a certain way, used a certain pedal. You have to have done, like you said, all these 1%ers that just add up to the end product. And with the mentality that is existing on the internet at the moment, where you can get this sound by just using this one plugin.
Yeah, it's one step like, and it's all done for you. No way, dude.
Or these, you know, all-in-one plugins that every plugin developer is creating, and I get it. And they're awesome. They are awesome if you know how to use them and if you know, but you know, you can get it any other number of ways. There's infinite numbers of ways.
There's so much, I guess, the process of all of this stuff is like how you become creatively like forward thinking. And I think it's about, you know, if anything, you know, like it's about maybe like that younger producer misusing stuff and figuring out, you know, not reading a manual. And, you know, it's almost the exact opposite of like learn the best practice of how you gain stage the SSL versus like I don't even know what gain staging is. And I just stacked 4, like decapitators or magma tube or, whatever weird distortion thing you've got. And you just end up with this thing that is like totally blowing the headroom. It's
no limiter on the mix bus.
Yeah,
like
everything's wrong. And that's like incredible. But it's a sort of, but it doesn't, it's that thing I think about like, the plugin developer. It's a bigger, sort of philosophical kind of thought piece on like how technology like funnels us to be probably, it irons things out for us. And it's, that one step does all kind of approach that you just said like doesn't work. And that's really true, I think like again and again,
Yeah, I think the repeatability of being able to know your process. And that's where I want to pivot into. Hey, thanks so much for listening so far. There is plenty more to come, so don't go anywhere. I just wanted to let you know that this podcast is made completely independently by myself with no sponsors. So if you like what you hear and you would like to show your support, you can send a donation to the PayPal link, paypal.me/whatsthatsound. The link is also in the show notes. Thanks so much for your support, and let's get back to it. I want to talk about your process. I've looked at, that video that you were recently on showcasing your studio. It's extremely impressive, some of the pieces of gear that you have and things like that. So talk us through what your process looks like these days, whether it's in your studio or another studio. Mm-hmm. What does it kind of look like?
Well, short answer is it's always different, and it's a lot of, depending on what the artist is doing, what the material is asking for, what part of their career they're in. I work with a lot of sort of emerging and, mid-level kind of artists. That's my community. They're my people, and it's like, if we're in the studio working away and we're making like maybe, 25 to 35 records a year or something, like they might have only made 2 records in their whole life. And there are, again, this thing about like how far into the process can you take them? It doesn't matter. Or like, how much should you explain? Do you need to explain versus just make things happen and just move and be, creative with that. But yeah, so like if this makes sense to then say, all the stuff that's in this room, particularly, which is like my production space and really just a mixing room. But, you can see I've got drums and I've got amps and I've got a electric grand piano and an organ and synthesizers and things in here that help me do things really quickly, I guess. And I can pick up an instrument and just play, or better yet, hand it to the artist for them to play it, and see what kind of creative collisions happen between us and then throw that into the microphone and kind of, try and capture magic moments, and just picking up. I heard like Tom Dowd say this or something, it's like we're just trying to pick up fruit, we're just like walking around a field and picking up like the ripe strawberries, and being like, that's the ripe one. But you had to walk down the whole aisle to like, or the row in the farm, it's like kind of, sorry, bad analogy. But so everything that's in here is very like, big, immediate sort of sounds. I'm kind of obsessed with British, recording, just, cliche, but everybody loves the Beatles. Well, I love the Beatles too. And I really love the sound of, the stuff Jeff and Ken did in the 60s and the red consoles and the TG stuff. And, for better or worse, I've used the real Fairchild. I've used the real things, and I am addicted to those sounds. I love the sound of the real stuff so much, man. And so just not, I think, the other point to that process thing though is like not to have too many things that like you've got to know how to use all the things that you've got really well and make a point to then, for me, I like things to be kind of like streamlined. It looks like a mess in here because it's been a busy week in here, but normally it's very clean. My desk right now is not clean, but normally it's very like clean. And I like to like start a mix with, just simple moves that do big things, but they're all analog things. They're all analog toys that I'm leaning on to like get sort of the big steps first, and then, you know, throughout the tracking process at a track level, I've been trying to add varnish to everything as we go and just kind of keep building on that, you know, and I mean varnish in like not just the gear, but like in the performances and in helping the artist, you know, find the thing that's the most emotive version or the most concentrated, boiled down version of the thing they're trying to say or play, you know, seeing it that
Well,
moment.
there's a bunch of stuff in there. I mean, I wanted to start off with what you touched on at the start is the ease of picking something up and being able to record it. Sounds like to me that it's a very free process. And what I want to know is, you know, different processes like to work with pre-production in different ways. Do you find that a majority of the pieces that you work on start from nothing, or are you generally more going from a demo of people's works and building on that?
Probably more like a demo more often, but definitely sometimes, you know, my session I had yesterday, I was literally sitting here with an amazing artist who I've already done a record with, and we're working on his next record, and just putting the guitar in a weird tuning and just like literally like shut your eyes and just walking around in the dark, strumming in a weird, you know, altered open D tuning and being like, wow, there's something. We just found a little nugget of something, you know. So like songwriting from a genesis point is less what I do, but it definitely does happen. But more often than not, it's like meeting them, particularly when I'm working with bands, which I love that, where it's like there's already this like whole, you know, soup boiling, you know, simmering away, hopefully at something, you know, and just being able to come in and just be like, you know, did we just miss like this moment, or is there something great here that we could elaborate on? And trying really hard to, as much as I can, this is my personal favorite way that a producer behaves when I've worked under other producers, is not them telling you what to do, but just prompting the question. You know, what would it sound like for you to do this thing more? And then be like, no, I don't want to like play the notes for you or play the part for or sing it at you, but like you figure it out now based on that prompt. And, you know, it's all those like oblique strategies, Brian Eno things kind of like start playing up there, you know, and you just kind of keep asking, or just the mirror, you know, you just hold the mirror back up at them and go, what is it? What are you trying to, you know, you can tell that this part isn't quite right, or it's like, it could be better. There's a feeling that it just, the sense in the room that like that bit maybe isn't quite there yet. What do we do, you know, rather than
I love that. And that takes patience, you know.
Yeah.
It takes a real sense of understanding where they're at and being like, okay, they're close or they're way too far away. We need to figure this out. But it's also like allowing that creativity to flourish and being just the person that guides them in the right direction. And I love that. And I think that can be really tough because, you know, most of us, I would say, producers are people that know what they're looking for and know how to get it. But it takes real self-control to be able to just say, it's not my thing, it's theirs. And I just want to be able to let them figure out how to find it.
It can be nice. Don't you think it can be nice that like if you see, you know, and this comes from experience, I think, but like you can see where they're at and you could quite quickly imagine 3 good outcomes for where the thing could go, but not like in a way where you feel confident that if you ask the question, hey, this could go somewhere, you know, that like, but they might be able to find their own direction off, you know, and it might not even be one of those branches that you have in your mind, but for them, if they do go, hey, well, like we can't figure it out, for you then to be like, well, look, how about, you know, we go to the relative
X, Y,
binary.
or Z.
Exactly. You know, whatever that part is, or we should change a sound or something. And just to be able, again, just to move quickly and, you know, let them see the work happening, though, I think is also really good sometimes, even though you're not talking about it, you're not trying to make a big deal about it. But I think from a value point of view and from a them feeling, you know, part of the process, for them to see you do some work, you know, it's like it's great as well, just as good as it is for you to sit back and almost do nothing, the whole time and just do
But I think what stands out to me and how I can relate is, we've been part of the songwriting process and collaboration process with people, and that is the joy of collaborating people that listen to this podcast would have heard me say this a bunch of times, is having the sum of two parts of two people that may be on similar pages or completely different pages, but finding a middle ground of the two or three or four or five or how many people there are.
Yep.
And that being like, this is magic because we couldn't have created it by ourselves.
Best.
But when you're a producer, you're not always part of the songwriting process. Like we were saying, they've already written the song. You're just trying to find the best parts of it, and allowing them to do that is really special. And you not necessarily being one of those people, but just guiding them to be those people. I love that. That's really, really,
totally,
really cool.
Man. Yeah. In a funny way, like you do end up still feeling very much like the song is, you recognize yourself in the song, even if you didn't really, change any of the chords or any of the lyrics or anything, but you can still go, I remember the process of like the developing of that, and even if the song was like really close to done by the time you heard it, if you helped just guide the arrangement and the dynamics and the sonic landscape that it lives in, I feel like that joy that you talked about is like knocked on even further when you recognize your own humanity and creativity or whatever, like in something in a really like hands-off kind of way. Or you know what I mean? Like that's, I think that's my like probably my North Star kind of direction on producing. Like at the best day you can have is like where it seems like you either did a lot, maybe there are times where I'll play all the other instruments on the record and and that's, I love that too, but there's like just as much joy from where I didn't play any of the instruments. I literally was just guiding a process and, capturing something technically as an engineer and then mixing it, where all of the feeling of like, oh wow, I really lived in that song and I really like got the message and I really, felt my own story in the lyrics or whatever it was, or you can imagine a narrative in that's like maybe not even anything like what the songwriter intended. Like all of our favorite songs are like that, right? You insert your own kind of meaning into it or something, or you see something profound and insightful in it.
Yeah. I love it, man. That's awesome.
Best time ever.
Yeah, it's so good. Let's pivot into sort of the business side of things. We were talking about, the professionalism and that sort of thing of being in a session, but I also like to discuss the outside of sessions, not necessarily working with the band, but the business side of being a producer or an engineer. And in your case, you obviously play with other musicians as well. And so I want to know what are your focuses in those regards, being a business,
Yeah, man. I think, we're in a time-based industry. So it's like you just need to make sure that you account for your time as well as you can. And hopefully, each year, you try and like do more for your clients, and create better outcomes for their careers so that you can justify charging a little bit more, And I've kind of done that, really slowly over 10, 12 years now, like kind of just edged it up slowly. And I think that has always helped me feel, sort of strong and secure in, being able to like, primarily just reinvest in my business. So that, anything to do with, making my work better and easier, but in a way that still creates all of those things we were talking about before about like just, I don't mean like easier by like watering it down easier. I mean like easier in terms of like get to more cool creative outcomes quicker. So that often is, a new pedal or a new microphone or something. I think, what I was going to say was, I think it's really important that we, again, like help our community in a business sense. So I'm really into booking the commercial studios that are in this region, working out of Rocking Horse and the Music Farm and Brooklet, formerly La Cueva, Love Street, the places that are around where you can do that, and then also like gainfully employ your team. I have like the most amazing bunch of session players who I love to work with all the time, and they know that budgets for some things are better or worse, but I try really hard to always pay them their rate, and they go, if I need $500 a day to come and play, I'm like, I will get that for you. And, I value the fact that like what they're going to bring is making the work better and my life easier. And the value is just like everything is like better then, and if that means I've got to charge more to the client, well, I've got to explain that to them and help them understand that they then become a part of that whole ecosystem as well. And the fact that like the more producers doing well, the better it is for all of us, I think. But we've got to remember the thing we've got to do is take care of our artists to do well, and help them with their career. And so I suppose it's like understanding where they're at in their career and what are the possible outcomes. And, does it make sense for a unsigned artist to spend tens of thousands of dollars, like doing something when they or releasing something that they don't have any audience for, or is it better to what's the other version of that? Do a single, do a bunch of single campaigns, and take small steps as opposed to like just like here's the full album, and release that to just 100 friends and family kind of maybe. You want to have that like some level of critical mass behind the audience of something, and just what does that mean? It's like it's almost the same equation for them in terms of like they need to invest in their community, which is their audience, in the same way that us as producers, we need to invest in our community, which is our session players, our studio owner, manager, people who we book studio time from. And then, like our mastering engineers for me and you, our managers or our whatever, if you do that, all of those things, like, and trying to see that more holistically than just like how much can you get for yourself. I think that's the number one mistake, obviously, like cannot be.
Well, I think you've, I mean, I don't know how many people would think of things in that way, but when you use the word ecosystem and community, it makes complete sense. And it it's so hard to be, it's hard to be isolated in this journey because you're not really going to get anywhere. Like we were saying earlier, you need people around you to help level up yourself, but you don't realize necessarily unless you are doing it that by helping other people out and bringing people into that ecosystem or that space, that it benefits everyone, as well as, when you're in a band and you have, or if you're a solo artist or anything like that, the experience that you gain from being around different people that are really great at what they do, as well as just networking, being around those people and learning from them and meeting them and knowing that potentially the next time you do something, whether it be live or in the studio, you can then reach out one-to-one rather than going through the producer.
So invaluable.
And being like, you just never know who you're going to make good mates with. You're never going to know that person could be your manager in the future. Who knows?
Exactly.
Who knows?
Yeah, totally, man. It's so important that whole, thinking about it as it's not a destination, it's a journey. And you want, like, we're humans, you want to have lots of great people on that journey with you, and continue to be like maybe not the smartest person in the room. That's a great thing. Like, keep your beginner's mind, even if you're working with, somebody who is an actual beginner. But, there's things you can learn all the time from the people around you, and you're, probably unconsciously teaching them stuff all the time as well. Just how you said,
absolutely.
And that's really great for them. And we've got a really specific set of circumstances and challenges and opportunities being in Australia. Like Australia is its own, real special set of like culture and, audience mass and distances between audiences and,
like being far away from everywhere else in the
everything,
world.
To get equipment fixed, to have space to do things, to be able to afford to tour, all of that stuff. It all comes into that equation of, like a business point of view, and you need to kind of like rationalize that enough. You probably also, I don't know, it makes me think of that like quote, I think we were saying this at did I say this to you at the MPEG thing of like, it's so, playing golf is like one of those things where it's like, if you actually knew how hard it was when you started, you would never even try. You just wouldn't even try it. And like, you need to be a little bit naive to like do music, I think. And in the right kind of way though, where it's like something pulls you there, whatever, people do music for lots of different reasons, but the real heart value, community value of music pulls you there, and then it's like, how do you then carve out your niche or or follow the path of others that you can see works for you and makes sense to you, ideologically.
I think it's a combination of like being naive, like you said, but also being completely open to possibilities. Yeah. Because when you don't know things, you're like, well, I don't know that I don't know them, first of all. But if I'm aware that I don't know things, then you'll kind of just your eyes will be open a little bit more to, that looks like something that I need to learn, or that looks like someone I need to meet or be around, or
it makes you hungry,
like that.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that inner drive is like a hunger, to just be
does,
like, I want to be nourished more by learning more things and sharing those things.
But what it does as well is when you have those moments where you like meet that person or learn that new thing or find a piece of gear that you didn't know existed, those aha moments is, to me, what I think keeps people going, because music and the music industry is so tough to stand out, to be recognized as someone that is worth working with or listening to or anything like that. It's so difficult. Obviously, it's like, everyone would do it if it was easy. And, a lot of people still do it, but it's because of those little moments where you meet the person or you do the job or you mix the thing and it sounds amazing. It's all these little things, the aha moments that you're like, this is why I do it. And you have to, if you're going through a slump of not having those moments, because there are slumps. There's times where you're like, man, fuck, what am I doing?
Totally,
man.
man.
Like, this is a drainer.
I was just saying that to you before, right? Like it was like, my last month was like, wow, maybe I'm never going to work again. And then this month has been insanely busy. But it's like, I know that's like a part of, over the last 10 years, that has happened to me plenty of times, and
so many.
I've watched those older mentor figure people say the same, and they just go, you just get used to that feeling of sitting in that discomfort, and you'll get better at like, obviously rationalizing cash flow and stuff, getting that, figuring that stuff out the best way you can, and having lots of different strings in your bow. Is that the saying? Yeah. Arrows in your quiver, something. Having different things.
Keeping your options open.
Yeah. Having different things that you can do to, be of value to other people that they are then able to pay you to do, is the key, surely, to the survival.
Yeah, and I like to talk about, some of the challenges that come along with not necessarily just, being a producer or an engineer or doing what we do, but like, we've talked about the things that work well, being around a network, being around a community, helping people obtain their artistic vision, those sorts of things. But what do you think? Do you think money is the biggest challenge, or what other challenges appear to you that like this is a really difficult thing to be, and how do you overcome that, I guess?
Yeah, I'm not sure, man. I think I'm kind of drawing a blank on it, how I actually sort of, feel about what is the biggest challenge. Is it money? It can be. or it can seem like it is.
Yeah.
That's it's a bigger debate about like the whole damn system's wrong, kids. It's like neoliberal capitalism and like the whole thing, the housing situation and cost of living. But it's like, I'm a very, progressive, hopeful person in one hand. Actually, Tal, my partner, she has a great saying for this. She's like, it's like go for, it's like short-term optimism, long-term pessimism, perhaps, is that's a good way just to be like, I'm okay with it's sort of, it doesn't look like it's going all right, but it's going all right, and we'll be okay. Yeah. But you do need to stay hopeful. And how do you find that? I think you can, really like try and immerse yourself in the art in a way that, recognizes that that's our job as artists, is to, point out the fact that it's hard, or it's, the situation, in the Middle East or in America is fucked up right now, and like not to discount that and be like, rose-colored glasses, everything's, it's, or like, it's all about me. I'm just this thing doing my own. No, it's like, no, dude, you're part of, we're all part of the thing together. But figuring out like, whether it's, doing teaching, whether it's playing gigs, covers or originals with a artist, whether it's, doing recording voiceovers for audiobooks or working on, film score stuff. I've been doing a bit of that recently, and that like
cool.
And it's been amazing. And dude, I'll tell you what, there are budgets still in film and TV to make music, and it's incredible.
Unreal.
And maybe have a think about doing some more, looking at those different places. Video game music, God, if you could do that kind of stuff. Man. It's incredible and it's so fun,
it's an expanding market because it's new and like, and new is
it's not
the
new,
overall
but it's
picture
totally,
of things. But I think that's a good point is to keep your eyes open to those things that exist that are booming and like maybe not be directly like, you might not be working on your favorite punk band or something like that if you're into that sort of thing, but you're still able to do the thing that you love. And if it's a little bit divergent, great, because you'll gain some other opportunities from it.
Totally. And think about the always, even if you're on a real crummy session, you're just like, I'm still getting to record the drums today and I love recording the drums, or I'm still getting to, play keys on this terrible song, but I love playing my piano or, and it's like that kind of attitude.
But I think that finding those, the being aware of like, this isn't what I'm into, but what I'm doing with the keyboard isn't what I'm used to, but I can take that into the things that I love to do. And, you might just go for a different chord progression. You go, I've never used that chord progression in my life. Let's see if I can bring that into one of my artists, one of my clients' songs or something, just little things like that. Yeah, absolutely.
There was, I was going to say like on that other point though about some good advice that I got once. It's like Duck said this to me years ago. He's like, the thing you end up doing will be the thing that it becomes. So just make sure though too that like that equation is always the right equation for you in your inner child or something where that's like, if you want to produce punk bands, and I'm with you on that, like make sure that you do produce punk bands. Don't like not do that, even if the money side of it isn't where your career really needs to be. Like make sure you keep doing the thing you want to do, because if you don't, you'll end up becoming bitter,
unfulfilled.
And and just don't let it happen. Like actively don't let it happen. By just make sure you just do the thing you want to do. And I think if you say, you've heard, I'm sure people have said this on the pod before, but like say no to stuff. Even when times are skint, sometimes it's more valuable to go, lie on the beach here on the Gold Coast than it is to like work on something that's just going to be an absolute punish, That's an important thing that it's hard to learn. It's scary to do that sometimes, but it's important.
It is. Yeah. But I think when you go through enough of those shitty sessions, if you're clever enough to know what the signs are coming up to those
Yeah,
sessions,
you won't even get
then
there.
you won't get there.
Yeah,
You'll
yeah.
it'll be easy to say no as
Yeah.
opposed to being like, I need the money, I need this, I need that. Yeah,
Totally,
absolutely.
man. Yeah.
Well, what's the near future bring, man?
Oh man, this next couple months is lots of production on bands and artists. Working with next week I'm working with a really great band, doing a little bit of touring with Carl, a guy Carl S. Williams, who I play with. I've been playing with the last 10 years. We're going to Townsville next week. That's going to be really fun. Sort of spot shows with Carl, and then record production, and then some more work on this Netflix doco music with this incredible composer, Simon Walbrook, who I've been doing a bunch of work with the last couple of years. I'm just like, I've got a studio assistant at the moment who I'm mentoring, which is going off and helping him like do more, kind of get his career kind of going. But also he's been incredible help for me and prepping mixes and just trying to be really effective with my time, I think, at the moment, dude. But yeah, still making time to, exercise, eat well, drink less, have really good quality time with my family and friends here on the coast, and just eye on the prize, keep working on great tracks, and putting a little bit of money aside each month and eventually buying an M49. That's my little trophy thing that I'm like,
yeah, we gotta have them.
I've used a real M49 a bunch of times at Sing Sing back in the day, and I'm like, that, Neumann reissued one last year, and I was just like, I need that. I heard Dave Fridman talking about using it, and just being like, it's the best microphone you can get. And I was like, I want that. And I want to
yeah, look, we do have to have those little things.
Totally.
I mean,
something
that's
be
not
excited
necessarily
about.
a little thing.
It's a big thing, and it's important. And I've would love to, sometime in the next year, kind of like get one of those. That would be cool.
Yeah,
and
nice.
Yeah, doing
I always like to finish the podcast off. We've gone through a bunch of nuggets of advice, but for people that are in their first, say, 5 years of listening to this podcast, first 5 years of working, first of all, advice for producers / engineers, and then if there's any artists that might be listening to the podcast, what advice do you have for them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard you ask this
clumsily worded.
So, man,
there,
I haven't, I bet I've got a better answer for this, but the one that just popped into my mind just then was something Rich Stolz used to say to me. He would say, this is to the producer engineers. He goes, the session's not on until you mic in the kick drum that morning, and think about what that means and be like, you need to take care of your schedule and your communication with your artists, and just anything can happen at any moment. There can be a global pandemic and everything can change. And just, I guess that's a point about be present and be grateful for the moment. That will, that enthusiasm will get you further than your innate, if you're talented at, differentiating 250 hertz from 350 hertz, your enthusiasm for music will get you further than anything else. And that will be, I'm sure that is why I'm sitting here, it's because I just love doing the job. So love doing the job is my advice.
Yeah, beautiful.
And then for the artists, man, it's hard. It's a tough time to be an independent artist, particularly, but the opportunity to just be a contributor to the world of music as a songwriter, particularly, I think enjoy the same thing, love playing your instrument and just love the actual mechanics of playing the guitar or playing the drums or whatever, is just no explanation needed. That's incredible. But if you're an actual songwriter, I think you have a really important role in the world, and I think you need to be you need to honor your responsibility to that and honor your work and share it, just be fearless and go for it. And it's that, if you do it and you do it wholeheartedly and, you know, you drill down on what is your unique insight into the world, you'll be successful. And it mightn't be monetarily at first, but eventually I'm sure there will be, the value is intrinsic in the work, you know, and yeah. Take care of get your APRA shit sorted, you know, and like take care of your publishing. Don't give your publishing away. Don't give it away. Hang on to it.
I was doing all the PPCA stuff yesterday. I was a pain in the ass, but it's like, you know, it's all of those things that do add up.
Yeah.
And you got to be smart about it. You got to take the time to do it.
Yeah.
But when you've got your little checklists in place, it just makes everything easier. Don't wait to do everything in bulk because then it becomes a fucking pain in the ass.
Yeah, man. Totally. Yeah.
Do it gradually.
Yeah, it's nearly tax time, and it's like just make sure your spreadsheets are good, and you know make sure that you just pay your bills like this is us to our people. Just like get everything in order, like so that you've got that like emotional and cerebral bandwidth to like actually do the music and be there and just be like the back end, you know, your all the mic cables work, the patch bay works, the microphones all work, everything's good. I'm not going to need to apologize for anything breaking down or not being right today. We're just going to create and it's going to be a cool time, you know?
Yeah, and you realize that if something does fuck up, you'll find another way.
Totally.
You always do.
Yeah. You know,
you always
you've always got 3 options of like other things that you can do to make it happen still, you know?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
I love it, man. This has been an awesome chat. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, dude. Yeah, this is really cool. I love what you're doing here, and it's a unique insight, I think, into the Australian world, you know, and there's so much American stuff that we hear, you know, or English stuff that we can hear about this, but this perspective of what it's like to do what we do specific to here is really important, man. And this is a great pod for that reason.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. And I will absolutely second that. That is exactly why I do it. But yeah, thanks again. And for any of the links or anything that you want to find out more about George or myself, they'll be in the show notes. So hit them up if you have any suggestions or questions, or if you want to suggest a next guest or anything like that, you can email me. All of that stuff's in the show notes. Check it out at your leisure. But thank you again, George, and thanks to you all for listening. And we will see you next time on What's That Sound podcast. Thanks for listening to What's That Sound. Make sure you hit follow or subscribe on your podcast platform to stay up to date with each new episode. We'll catch you next time.